kind of entertainment you can imagine. Plays, musicians, singers, comedians, vaudeville acts, political speakers spoke here, last two territorial governors spoke here. They would set, that's a movie screen, that's kind of hiding how big the stage is. They would set rings up on the stage and do boxing matches, wrestling matches. Before they put the permanent seating in, they used to have wooden chairs. They would do roller skating up here in the winters. But anyway.
What is that beeping? Oh, it's you? Okay.
So they needed all that space to be able to raise and lower all the various backdrops and everything. There were two small dressing rooms in each corner. This was adjustable. We had panels here to slide on these. Yeah, don't worry about that. That's leftover Christmas broken bulb. So the actors and stagehands could all be, off script. There's a double doorway in the back, which we currently have chained shut. But on the other side, there's a stair that goes down to it. And when the troops would come through, that's where they would bring all their supplies and everything up. Any questions so far?
No. This is awesome, though.
Yeah, and then there's an entrance on either side. That one there's kind of full of junk, though, so you're probably better off to use that one.
Mm-hmm.
That was kind of pseudo storage. And then this was how you would get up and look into the attic space, which is basically just some plywood and a bunch of beams up there right now, and some old seat parts and stuff like that. Yeah, probably better. That way they probably won't feel so secluded. There is no trap door, which is strange. Even though there is a hollow space under the stage that goes all across. I think they would have had the obligatory trap door. No such luck. And you can either go down that way or get that stuff off the stairs so it's not a trip hazard. What is wrong with that there? But I did ask you. This is Piper, by the way.
Hi, Piper.
Hi, Piper.
Her dad may be one of the new ghosts in here. He passed away. How long has it been now?
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
That's actually him up there. The guy with the camel hat. He did a lot of work in here with me. And unfortunately, he had an unexpected heart attack and passed away. Was it 42?
Sorry to hear that.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll be honest, I'm not a huge think there's ghost fan, but there's been some weird stuff. And I could have sworn, because I like listening to stereo up here when I'm working, and it'll jam pretty loud. But I could have sworn I could hear his voice coming out of that speaker over there when I was up here one day. But it could have been static. But in any case, as far as the known history, do you want to tell them? Yes. She doesn't like to come up here by herself at night.
No, I do not. I'll come up here by myself in the daytime, but I will not come up here at night.
I've been up here by myself many times late at night when I was plastering the walls at midnight. And you would get that creepy feeling, like somebody is staring at you, But it's an old building and it's creepy. So, your imagination runs away with you. But as far as the potential ghosts, not counting Johnny, who would be recent addition, unfortunately, he's the one I always thought would carry on with this after I died, and then I could haunt the place too. But earliest known ghost story dates back to 1916. That was it when the theater was at its height. There was a young married couple that had been married about a month, and there was a very famous vaudeville troupe, and you guys can sit down if you'd rather.
Okay, bet.
That way, you're not sitting like this. The chairs are somewhat comfortable.
Oh, they are comfortable.
Well, better than standing.
Look at this doll.
So he decided to bring his new bride up to see the show because the lead act was a gentleman who was fairly well known in vaudeville circles as both an actor and a singer. And so he brought her up. They watched the show. She thoroughly enjoyed it. And just like today, you know, there was a little bit of idol worship going on from the new bride. She really fell for the actor. So the next night, she tells her husband she'd like to go see the show again because the show was here for a week. So he has no problem with it. So she comes back up. And I pieced this together from 4 or 5 different stories, some newspaper accounts, some visiting some of the graves at the old cemetery on the hill, et cetera, et cetera. So, and some of it I've extrapolated, talking to some of the original Harry family, some of the stories they had. But in any case, supposedly she came back the next night, and after the show was over, she went backstage and ended up talking to the actor. And visited with him for some time and then went home. Well, she decided again on the 3rd night that she wanted to go see the show again, but she was afraid to tell her new husband that, you know, she wanted to go see this actor because, you know, it would seem improper, especially in 1916 era moral values. So she tells him she's going to visit a sister or some such, and then she comes up. And it spends even longer. Several people had commented that after the show was over, that the actor would go climb up into the attic space, and there's a door on that end that would open up out onto the roof. And you know, Oklahoma, it's hot, it's summer. He would stand up there because you had a decent breeze, and he would just watch all the traffic on the street. And supposedly on this Wednesday, she went out there with him and was seen by some people in town up on top of the roof. And a couple of his friends approached him and said, hey, you know, did you know your wife was up there with the actor? And at first he kind of blew it off. And then that Thursday, she again makes an excuse that she's going to go somewhere. And again comes up here and is again seen up on the roof and going backstage with the actor. So his friends again approach him and tell him, hey, something's going on. And so he decides on that Friday, the last night of the show, that he would see what she did. And again, she made an excuse. This time he followed her, saw her coming to the theater, waited until the show was almost ready to start, and he came up and sat in the back. She sat there through the show, and as soon as the show was over, she immediately jumped up and went backstage. Well, he waited a few minutes, and she didn't come back, so he went back looking for her, asked one of the stagehands where she was, and they told her she had gone up on the roof with the actor. So he climbs up onto the roof, and supposedly, it depends on who you talk to, but suppose he caught him in some version of an embrace and lost his temper and attacked the actor. And then, depending on which version you get, either she A, tried to break up the fight and was knocked from the corner of the roof, or B, in her shame, leapt off the corner of the roof. I kind of lean more toward the first one, but I have no way to prove either one. Regardless, she fell 40 feet to her death on the stones out there. And originally that was all just like you see at that section down there. It's all sandstone. That was what the sidewalk was. The bricks were added in the 30s during the Great Depression. But that section of the old bricks is still there, and there is two shattered stones, where it would be pretty much exactly if you came off the corner of that building, that's where you would have landed. The sandstone's pretty brittle, and the impact of a body dropping that far would most likely have broken the stone. I wasn't aware of the stone when I originally heard this story. It was one of the descendants of the family, a lady named Tammy Harry, and her grandmother, or her great aunt, was the last owner here. And she sold the property in '87 to the gentleman who did the partial restoration in the '80s. And the same family had operated it, you know, since its inception. And she used to tell her when she was a young girl up here with her to not step on that stone. It's the unlucky stone. And she would ask her aunt, why is it unlucky? And she goes, I don't know. My mother used to tell me it was the unlucky stone. Of course, Helen graduated high school in 27, so she would have been a young child when the event occurred. So they probably never told her what really happened. It just, again, circumstantial evidence, but, it does fit. And when I told her this story, she goes, wow, now I understand why she would have told me it was the unlucky stone. So in any case, after the wife's death, the troop packs up, jumps on the train, they're gone.
Mm-hmm.
You want me to turn the AC on up here? It is a little warm.
I don't know. It's up to you.
It takes it a while to cool down, but it's better than. It's been so cool lately, I haven't even thought about it, but today was a little warm.
Just a little bit, yeah.
Yeah, it was, I think, got what, 88, 89 today or something?
Now, what was the woman's name that fell off the roof? Was their name?
Well, actually, I do have a clue. I just never, like I told you, I never can remember names. I could show you her grave, or at least what I'm 99% sure is her grave at the old cemetery. I tried to find, on one hand, the town is lucky. A lot of its old newspapers are scanned and posted on the Oklahoma Historical Society. Unfortunately, that's only about 20% of them.
Right.
And so I looked back through there trying to find a specific deal on the death related to her name, and I couldn't find anything.
What was the name again?
I have no idea.
Oh, that's what I just asked him.
This one
Well,
Yeah.
I do. It's on her grave out there, but I searched through the records. And the old cemetery records, that cemetery is basically borderline abandoned.
Yeah.
There's an old lady who has the records, but I'm not sure that would tell me anything other more than what plot she was buried in and what her name was, which I can tell that by just walking up to the grave.
Right.
And a lot of those graves out there, the cemetery was vandalized through the years, so you got the headstone bases, and the headstones were shattered.
Yeah,
A lot
I
of-
got
a lot of
pictures of
this-
that last time I went out.
Yeah, a lot of them just had wooden markers, which have long since rotted away. But she actually has a very ornate headstone for the era, and it's off by itself in the extreme northeast corner.
Now, is this the one up here?
Yes.
Not Riverdale,
No,
Riverside,
not Riverside.
but
That's
the one up in the corner.
corner,
here.
right? Yeah.
Because we went to that one, we couldn't find a name for it.
There's a name on it.
Is there? We couldn't find one.
Really? Yeah. No, there's a name on it. It says wife of somebody.
No, I meant the cemetery.
Oh, it's just called the Rolston Cemetery.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. Anyway, supposedly he goes into a complete funk, stops taking care of himself, starts drinking heavily. His friends try to get him to snap out of it. He never does. And this goes on for months, and he basically becomes a drunk staggering up down the street for the next year. Mourning the loss of his wife, etc., etc. Then word comes that the troop is returning. It's a year later. And once word reaches him, his friends are surprised to see that he snaps out of it. Cleans himself up, gets a shave and haircut, gets clean clothes, stops drinking, starts engaging in activities with his friends again, and tells them that he's over it. That's all it took. It's been a year. He's done grieving. He's ready to move on with his life. And he tells them to prove it. I'm going to go with you to the show when they come. And they're a little suspicious, so.
Yeah.
But they agree, and opening night, he buys a ticket front row center, which would have been one of these two seats. And his friends, are sitting around him. And they're watching him, and the show goes, and he claps when he should clap, and cheers when he should cheer, and everything seems to be fine. And as the finale of the show, the actor always sang a song. And so the actor gets up there and sings his famous song, whatever that may have been. And just as he finishes, the gentleman jumps up, runs up, starts climbing onto the stage. Well, his friends try to stop him, but they can't get there in time. He jumps up there, and the actor's kind of, just stunned, and he just kind of steps back. And then I get two different stories there, depending on which old story you believe. One, he pulls a knife and starts slashing the actor on the face and throat, chest. Another one, he pulls a glass vial out that has some type of acid and throws it in his face. regardless, the end result would have been basically the same. The actor falls to the stage in agony. His friends are restraining him, and he reaches again into his coat, pulls out another vial, drinks it, some kind of poison. 2 minutes later, he's dead. So, the troop, of course, police come, doctor comes, they take the actor down to the doctor. Nobody's sure if he's even going to live. The next morning, the troop jumps on the first train that comes through and gets out of here.
Right.
They bury the husband, but obviously not with the wife, and obviously not with the stone marker, because I can't find any evidence, unless, of course, it was just destroyed. But it definitely wasn't buried next. I mean, there's no husband buried next to the wife, and she's definitely off in about as far in the corner as you could have placed her. But
It might be because they considered it a
well, yeah, the
And they would
morals of the
replace
time, she was a hussy and messing around on her new husband of all things,
Oh.
and I'm sure nobody wanted her buried next to them, so he had to get a plot probably up in the corner. He paid for a nice stone, but there was nobody to do such for him. So I suspect that he was probably ended up being buried in the pauper section with the wood marker, which has long since rotted away. And you can tell the pauper section because you can see all the sunken areas with no markers of any kind.
Do you have a rough year about when that happened?
Right around 1916.
1916?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Now supposedly the actor survived, but he was horribly disfigured. Obviously he couldn't sing anymore because I think his throat damaged too, but it didn't really matter. You can't be a hideous person regardless and do performing. And according to the stories, he became a stagehand here at the Opera House. And he usually wore some type of hood to kind of hide his face. And he worked here for many years until the Opera House actually closed and boarded up. Now the Opera House went into decline in 1927 because that's the year talkie movies come out. And a large part of their revenue was silent movies, the old projectors up there.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I have a lot of the old silent movie actors and actresses painted on the wall. But it eventually fully closed. The Depression hit it hard in 1929, but by 1941 they boarded it up. And people said during those years they would always see the guy up on the roof, just like he used to do when he was actually a famous actor, for the same reasons, to catch the breeze. They said even after the Opera House was boarded up, and supposedly they let him live in the attic space while he was working as a stagehand here. I don't know if that's true. Definitely plausible. That's a nice big open area. You could have made a nice little man cave up there somewhere.
So basically, he became the Phantom of the Opera.
Well, the interesting thing is, if you look at the history of the Phantom of the Opera, it's around that time frame.
Mm-hmm.
It actually started as a serial in a French newspaper. They print each little piece of it, and then later it was combined into a book, and then later into a movie. And so I always wondered,
Yeah.
did the story come from here? Who knows? Maybe the French guy was traveling around. Who the heck? That's a pretty big leap, no doubt. But
Well, it's fun to fantasize.
yeah, well, it's a little different. It wasn't like because in this case, the female part died at the beginning, not he tracked her afterwards. But some similarities, no doubt. But in any case, after it was boarded up, they said they still saw him up there for a while, and then one day nobody saw him anymore. And of course, he never really interacted with anybody, so I think it took a while before people really realized he was gone forever. Now they claimed, of course, that's when the glass was still in the back windows back there.
Right.
They claimed, a lot of people claimed for years afterwards that they would see a figure looking out the glass. I told the story to a bunch of young boys. Was it last summer? Early last summer? And they were with their grandmother who lived down the road. And they come riding down here right at dusk. And one of the boys swears he saw some guy looking out the window at them. They scared them so bad they dropped their bikes and ran home. And didn't come back to their bikes till the sun came up the next day. But and in fact, her mother was swearing today she was seeing something looking out the back window. Oh, sorry, stepmother. Yeah, the last 2 nights she sat on this window over here. Because she accused me of setting up some kind of Halloween thing. I said, we just got it out. We haven't actually done anything yet.
Right.
And she goes, no, there's like a shadowy figure of a man up there.
3 different people.
What?
Yeah,
3 different people said they saw it. Yeah.
That was today?
The last 2
Like the
nights.
past 2
Yeah.
nights.
Okay.
Which I call BS, but
We'll see.
we'll see.
Now, what was the guy's name?
I have no clue.
You don't know his. Okay, the one that got disfigured.
Vaudeville records are notoriously incomplete.
Mhm.
I know it was part of a. I found the old newspaper ad where the thing came through. It was 10 different sections to the troupe. In fact, I got the old newspaper ad painted back there.
Mhm.
And it was a traveling troupe that would come through usually about every year.
Yeah.
And they would swap out various actors and actresses and stuff. And in fact, in 1913, one of the silent movie actresses actually took a break from silent movies and actually came through here as part of that troupe.
Oh, cool.
And you had a lot of, large troops out of Chicago, New York, stuff that would make tours across the country. But in any case, so you have that story. Now, then there were several people, supposedly in the 40s and 50s, who would claim, again, they would see the guy up on the roof. Sometimes they would see him with a woman, and it normally looked like she was, a lot of times, like she was wearing a wedding dress. Supposedly, the bride, that's what I call her, was buried in her wedding dress because they'd only been married a month or so.
Mhm.
And we did find an old wedding dress in this building.
Wow.
Wrapped up in burlap and plastic, hidden in a drawer when we cleaned it out. In fact, we did have it on that mannequin back there, but we're going to use it during our Halloween deal. She's going to wear it to be the bride.
Oh, that's
But
awesome.
we ordered some white contact lenses and
Very
everything.
good.
Oh yeah, that's gone.
But I don't know how old it is. I mean, it's got zippers on it, but zippers started in the 1890s, so. But we could tell it's old, and also the lady was extremely thin. In fact, I could barely get it zipped up on that mannequin. Fits her pretty good because she's extremely thin. She says she's going to get married in it someday.
Now watch me do it.
Yeah.
Try to get married.
Yeah, whatever. In any case, now
Tommy shows here, man, you and Ellie would get along.
that's probably the most popular, well-known one. People have said they've seen all 3, the husband, the wife, and the deal, and blah, blah, blah. Honestly, I haven't seen anything that I could tie to that story myself or any event that's occurred. Well, except for recently, I guess the guy looking out the back window out here.
I came across something actually earlier today. I was going through some papers, and there was I came across a report of a suicide.
Well, that's what they ruled her deal as, is a suicide.
So it was him.
Oh.
It was a man.
Well, I
And
guess
again,
technically it was a suicide if he drank poison and killed himself.
He had been.
I hadn't really
the
thought of
report
it that
was
way,
He had
but-
been drinking and had been despondent for a long period of
Well,
time,
that would tie in.
and took his life with carbolic acid.
Well,
And that
Well,
would have been
that-
about the right time
yeah.
frame.
yeah, that ties in. Well, that's interesting. Another little piece of
Yeah,
circumstantial
I'll have to go back
evidence.
in. I've got it saved in my research, so I'll go back.
See, in
and
the
see
local
if I can
paper
find
when I
it.
was looking in 1916 for
Yeah.
here, didn't say nothing about.
Right.
what had happened
I
here.
looked through them as well.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, there's a lot of pieces missing from that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And like, if you look at the papers, they stop in 1921,
Yes.
but I have papers from 1923. Unfortunately, and then there's like the exponent, I think they only got 2 copies of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I
So-
found too. There was hardly anything.
Yes, ma'am.
Can you tell them about whenever Mallory first comes in here?
Well, that ties into the other potential hauntings. Well, one would definitely probably be Bill Heiser, who invested years and a lot of money on the
I
restoration here.
read a lot on Bill Heiser.
Yeah, and but if he's got anything tied to him, other than the fact I think he'd be happy we're trying to save the building.
I would agree with that.
I haven't, I never knew the man, so I'm not sure what foibles would have been related to him. There is the crazy lady, Isabella. What was her last name? I never could pronounce Zybeck or Zygek or something like that. After Bill died, the property went up for taxes, and she bought it for, not even pennies on the dollar, like $748.84. He spent $200,000 on the restoration.
Yeah.
And she came in, locked the guy out who had the antique store downstairs, because you get a building for taxes, you get everything that's in it.
Right.
So she basically stole all his stuff, moved into the property, and lived downstairs for 12 years, even though there's no indoor plumbing. Her, a dog, and a couple hundred cats.
Oh.
We found a couple of cat skeletons when we were cleaning.
Oh, no.
But she was a hoarder of the worst kind.
Oh,
Picture any TV
gee,
show
yeah.
you've seen of hoarders?
Yeah.
They didn't know we handle this lady.
Oh, no.
She just brought junk in. And when we finally got the property, there was a little space on that door downstairs that went to that door that interconnects, which is where she lived. She had a mattress and a little coffee pot and all that kind of stuff. Then a little path to the other door, and there was a little path that went out to the back. And then she just stacked junk up everywhere. Well, then she also took no care of the property from the time she lived there. I'm not a psychologist, but she was definitely a paranoid schizophrenic.
Mm-hmm.
She was absolutely convinced everybody was coming to steal her stuff. And she would open up the store and people would stop, because it had all the antiques and, paintings on the deal. They'd come in and they'd